morning! Today I'm going to demonstrate Roumanian couching, and it's a different variation from New England economy stitch, and it's used on the King Ho Ho design. And we start in this corner here and work our way along the top. On the design itself, it's got 3 lines printed, and you do need these 3 lines as a guideline about where to put your stitches. So as you can see, I've put the King Ho Ho design over the frame and then squashed it down over the cling film as I normally do. I've used a slightly narrower roll of cling film and just overlapped it. So if you're using a magazine cover or some spare cling film, you can overlap it. It doesn't make any difference. So that one just goes as far as there. So I'm just going to score the plastic away, which of course is easy when it's just one piece. When it's 2 pieces, it's a little bit more tricky. Stab it away, and then that means I can rest my hand on this area and not rub any of the work if I've been stitching this long and short piece or any of that. So in this corner, just very faintly printed on, you'll see 3 lines, 1, 2, 3. And this is either side of the stitch. So if I just show you on the instructions, that is the outer line, that's the center line, and that's the other side of this stitch. And on the design, you'll see that it's over here. So the line goes printing all the way along, and you start at one side and down on the other. So I'm casting on as usual within an inch or so of the feature I'm about to stitch. Just my waist knot on the top and 3 little stitches. And then I'm going to look at the piece I'm going to stitch coming down here. So as I said, you need to come up on one side and down on the other. So that's the first action, up on the outside and down here. Now the next thing you're going to do is actually tie in that stitch by coming up to the right hand side of the center line, slanting across and going down on the outside. Now that angle on this particular design luckily happens to be the same angle as the twill, so I always use the twill either stitching against it or the warp or the weft to actually see the angle of my first stitches, and that just really establishes how you're going to use this stitch. So that's your first stitch, and then you come up again on one side, down over the outside with a flat stitch, up to the right hand side or slightly above as you see it of the line, the center line, and then use your needle and just put it down in between those 2 stitches. So that's it. You just come up on one side, go down on the other, come up just above the center line to one side of the center line and go down on the other side, keeping that angle. So that is Roumanian couching, and you can see it here. Now the reason you go down in between those 2 stitches rather than coming up through those stitches is that you can really see and separate those stitches. If you went up and down and then tried to come up between those stitches and get the angle, that's a much, much bigger ask. So I always come up below and then down between this stitch and the previous one. Now, depending on the thickness of the wool, of course, you can make your stitches slightly bigger. But on this particular piece, it was a very, very fine Persian type of wool, a really slim wool on the original. And I really am trying to replicate that by using Appleton's wool in a single thread. Now when you go round the corner, I'm just going to exaggerate the way you can just fan your stitches ever so slightly to just accommodate that corner. So that's just easing your way round the corner. Now you can angle your features any way you like, and if I was left-handed I'd probably start at the other end up here and work down that way. So it really, if you don't feel comfortable doing a stitch, find another way, turn your frame around turn it in a different angle. I very often work towards my belly because that's the way my tension works best. But when you're doing a stitch like this, it's just important that you use the thread and come up in the same distance as you have from the last one, and use those little holes in the thread, use the ridges, and use the printing above all to just keep that angle as you work your way along the branch. Of course, if you leave a gap, like I have here, then you can just take your needle back, and in the wonderful way that Crewel is so forgiving, you can just pop in an extra stitch, and honestly, a man on a galloping horse going past this cushion will never see it, so don't worry. So I'm going to put another stitch in here, because your eye naturally goes to the edge like that. And believe me, this often happens on antique pieces, and I imagine on the professional pieces actually, I imagine the master embroiderer coming past the novice embroiderer's work and saying to the apprentice, I think you should just pop in another stitch there. And that's what I would say when I'm teaching, and I really miss teaching at the moment. So I hope that this little video helps you.